I don't,
Do you have a
yeah, I don't
previous
know
one?
why. So there is a set apart link for every meeting that gets set up ahead. I don't know why.
Why it didn't print out?
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, I'm going to call to order the Rockport Select Board meeting for Monday, March 10, 2025, 6 p.m. We're here at the Parker Room in the Opera House. First item is amendments to the agenda, and I actually would like to suggest one. That is, we have the discussion item A is resolution of ORC future and task force creation. And the last two meetings, we've talked about the ORC, and last meeting, we talked about actually, I think, taking some action tonight. So if the board's okay with that, I'd suggest we move that to an action item.
I agree with that.
Do we
Makes
have a
sense.
motion? Like
Oh,
we wanna-
I'll make a motion that we
John had a
move,
question? I mean,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, we'll do discussion.
that we'll move the resolution for the ORC future and task force creation to an action item for tonight.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And then, any discussion?
Not about this.
Okay, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I see Michelle, so 5-0. Great. Okay, John, other
I'd
amendments?
just like to add a brief discussion on, I don't know if we've ever done this, created town goals for the year. Have we ever done such a thing?
Well, we have town manager goals
I know,
and
I'm
then
talking
select
about
board
sort of goals
priorities.
for the town for the year as, since we're coming through into budget, coming out of that, I was thinking, to be very transparent about what we're trying to accomplish this year.
And I think that we should definitely do that. I guess, like this, we have the select board priorities and the town manager goals, which are those things we do in
Do we
August.
publish the town manager goals?
No,
Okay.
no, it's really, in part, probably because it's part of
personnel.
it's personnel, but
Yeah.
they're also kind of somewhat obvious, which I wouldn't have any trouble showing anybody because there's sort of broad areas of, hey, we need to work in this area. We need to work on an agreement with our neighbors on wastewater disposal, for example, is one of them. For
That's-
those out there might want to know, so.
Right.
Yeah, that's
And
what I'm
that makes
talking
sense
about,
to
yeah.
make those publicly available, so
I mean,
people
you
know
know, there
that
may
we
be
actually have some
Yeah.
intention in terms of what we're doing. We're not just
Yeah.
randomly taking on issues, but we
Yeah,
actually have goals.
yeah, like last year, it could have been, to one of the agenda items, have the comprehensive plan done and ready for
Yes.
the June ballot in
Yes.
2025.
Yep, which it was. one
I
of
think it
those.
was, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we would have accomplished
Yeah.
that goal.
Check.
Great job, everybody, yeah.
But that's a very good point. I
Yeah.
mean, I hadn't
Yeah.
realized that they weren't publicly available, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, any public comment on non-agenda items? John, town manager's report. Oh,
Oh.
do we have one? If you,
I've never done this before.
okay, do you want to come up to the mic? Because that's the only way people at home can hear you.
Thank you. I'm gonna do this for
Yeah,
purposes.
and bring that mic down to your, I
Yeah,
know it's
a
a
little bit
little
high.
tall.
All right,
tonight.
I don't know,
Uh-oh.
and I don't want to take up too much of your time, I realize.
No, just introduce yourself and,
Thank you. So first of all, thank all of you in public service. I know that it's a thankless
if you could
job.
just introduce yourself first? Or are
Well,
you
that's
getting to
coming
that?
up. Yeah,
Got
that's.
it. Okay, I'll wait.
Yeah, but you guys are, and too often you don't get the thanks that you deserve. So you're only here when it's not working. So I appreciate your being here tonight and this opportunity just to share my thoughts with you. My name is Penelope Ray, and I married a Rockport native, and I've lived here since 1985, so about 40 years. My two children were born and raised here. One still lives in Rockport, and the other hopes to move back at some point. And I still live in the home where my children were born and raised, and I hope to pass it on to them when I die. I'm 77 years old, and my taxes went up 30% last year. 30%.
Yeah.
And, we talk about affordable housing. I really wonder if there will be a day when, I can no longer afford to keep my home. And so that's kind of what I'm about right now. I have an apartment over my garage. I've tried renting this apartment twice year-round. And every time winter comes, both tenants left. If you saw my driveway, you would know why. I'm on a fixed income, and I need to be able to rent that apartment out in order to stay in my home. I mean, the bulk
Absolutely.
especially with the tax increase, what I make goes for taxes. That's it. There's nothing left over. And I've been on the Airbnb platform. I've been a super host for 10 years. I can't rent full-time year-round. This is the only option I have to do this seasonal rental is what it is.
If I could just interrupt you, I want to hear everything from you, but we are not going to regulate short-term rentals. We have made that clear since the vote of the voters in 2021, and I think there's been some, maybe I'll just say it now, a lot of disinformation out there that our comprehensive plan is somehow suggesting that we are going to regulate short-term rentals, and there is nothing in the comprehensive plan that does that.
But there is.
Well,
There is, and that was my point. And
all right, well, I'll
no,
let
and
you
that's
finish
okay.
your comments, 'cause
But
I
I
don't
didn't
wanna
know,
get into a
because
back and
that's not
forth.
my understanding. And so that is part of in the comprehensive plan. And I won't go on because
I appreciate, because you're not alone. A lot of residents feel that concern and have expressed that concern. And we are going to, well,
on page 37 of the comprehensive plan, and what's fascinating to me is it's item H7, and the
Right.
number one priority in the comprehensive plan to address the lack of affordable housing is collect short-term rental data as it relates to housing stock. And that's what I'm here to sort of challenge. I'm concerned about the cost of living in Rockport. It's getting very expensive to be here.
and we want long-term residents to be able to stay here. So, but I appreciate what you're saying.
Right.
We are going to be talking about that more, so that is actually an agenda item.
Well, that's good, because it's when I look at it looks like you want to start regulating short-term rentals. That's what it looks like, collect short-term rental data. And it has to do with affordable housing. And from all the research that I've been looking at, the issue of affordable housing really is not related to vacation rentals. The issue is more about we need to build more homes. And the reality is in Mid-Coast Maine, there's a shortage of everything.
Yep.
And the homes that are being built are not the old FHA home. God, remember those roofs? I remember the FHA roof line. There's no profit margin in building those. So when the contractors do build, they've got to make a profit, and they're in demand. So they're building expensive homes, not affordable ones. And that's not a short-term rental issue.
Yeah.
We need more plumbers. We need more electricians. We've got scarcity in a whole lot of things that force the prices up. That's not about short-term rentals. And so
Sure.
I really don't think that item, H7, should be in the comprehensive plan. That's really part of why I'm here to talk about
And we'll
that.
be getting to that later in our agenda, but I appreciate the comments.
Well, thank you for listening to me.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
I appreciate, this is not my normal.
No, I know, that's
normal
not easy to
thing,
come and
but,
speak in front of people, but thank
But
you.
it's important enough for me to come here tonight because, we're just folks who love this town and want to stay here.
And we want you to stay here, so thank you. Do we have
Comments.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have comments and questions on a similar vein. So do you prefer to address it now and just kind of clear the air? Or do you want me to wait until that item?
Denise, I can't hear anything.
I know,
so
she's at
that
the, maybe
people at
you
home-
still need to come to the mic. The question is, should we be talking now about the short-term rental concerns or wait till we get to the agenda item that is really?
I have comments and questions on the same vein, so I didn't know if it would be appropriate to follow that with that here or ask questions at some point in the comprehensive plan, because I don't have many questions on the other parts of the plan, so
Yeah,
it's up to you.
I think we should do it when we talk about the comprehensive
Okay.
plan, just to sort of keep it clean in terms of agenda items versus non-agenda items. But we do want to hear from our residents, so appreciate that. Any other public comment on non-agenda items, so setting aside the short-term rental question? Okay, let's go to John's town manager report.
Okay, so we've got a number of items. This is a busy time of year. Certainly, this is a budget time. This is also a time when nomination papers and we're preparing for the June ballot. So we have nomination papers available. We have one seat for the select board. John's seat is up here at the end of this term in June. We have 2 seats on the library, which are a 3-year term. We have 1 seat on the school board for a 3-year term. There's actually 1 additional seat as well for a 1-year term that's just been added because we had a resignation of the school board. So there's 2 seats on the school board that are now open. And then there's 3 seats for 3-year terms on the budget committee. So those nomination papers would need to be back by April 11th by 4 o'clock. You have to get 25 signatures, at least 25 signatures of those who are registered to vote here in Rockport. Yeah, John, do you have a question?
I just wanted to jump in because to Penny's comment about taxes, you know, we really, you know, don't, the fact that there's a vacancy on the school board is a big opportunity because that's 70% of the taxes that we pay in this town. So if we want to help in that regard, you know, that's a great place for a qualified person to spend their time.
Yeah, the select board, actually, we only have control over about 20% of your taxes.
Yeah.
So it's, we do our best with our little piece of it, but we don't have control over the majority of the taxes.
Right. And we also collect 100%, however. So
Yeah.
then we then
We
have
get
to
100% of the
distribute
blame,
to
but
everybody
only
else.
70% of the concern.
So,
Yeah, we're the messengers with the bad news.
right, yeah, we get all the best jobs. We collect the least, and yeah. The reason why I mentioned that though is that the second property tax payment is due on April 15th. We can accept those payments online as well, so you don't even need to come in if you're far away and you can't come in or it's hard to get out. We've got a link right here. You can do it just you know, with a cup of coffee in your hand and at your laptop. So that's pretty exciting. I want to highlight once again the change for the vehicle license. The plate changes. We're moving away from the Chickadee plate into this new Pine Tree plate. The reason why I want to bring it up, one, is I want everyone to realize when you come in May to register your car, if you have a Chickadee plate, you're going to be told you need to swap that plate out. So not only should you be thinking about that fact that this is the state, you know, this is the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, this is not the town's doing, this is a state issue. But also it's going to take you a little bit more time than it has. So even though you're just coming to re-register a car, you don't have a new car, there's nothing new about it. If you have a Chickadee plate on your car now, it's going to take you a few minutes longer than it might have otherwise. And that obviously means that the lines will be a little bit longer. So give yourself a little bit more time for that exchange, because unfortunately it's not a simple process. We do have the plates will be arriving in our office to store and then eventually hand out. But for those who are, you know, planning ahead, there are different issues. If you have a vanity plate, there's different ways that's handled. And there's actually 2 different types of plates. There's one that has the tree on it, one doesn't have the tree on it. I'll let you figure out what you want to work for your car, but there's a lot of information here in the report. You can dig into more.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So when people are coming to re-register their cars, they should come with their old plates in hand?
They don't need to
Yes
have
or
their
no?
plates in hand.
Okay.
You can hand them off to the town, and we can collect them and bring them back to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles to be destroyed. But we're not going to run out to the parking lot with a
Okay, so
screwdriver.
it's not required to, okay.
Yeah, you need to remove the old plates from your car.
Yeah.
So, you know, for example, if you had a June or a May registration, we'll use the same example, you don't want to be driving around with Chickadee plates with a May 26th sticker on it. That would be illegal attachment of plates potentially, and the police wouldn't like that. So the legal plate is this plate, use the sticker, everything's great. If you do need help, our staff can do what they can. Obviously, we're not mechanics. We're not,
Oh, yeah,
you know, we're
yeah,
doing
yeah,
what we
yeah,
can
yeah.
to just register cars. But that's this is going to be a hardship for some people, and it's going to be, you know, we have a lot of elderly folks in our community. It's not easy to get down there. So, take those
So
off.
when we said we're swapping the plates, not necessarily then collecting the old ones?
We would collect the old ones if someone wants to
If
bring
they
them in.
want to.
Yes.
But it's like. if
Is
you-
there an interest if there's somebody wants to keep them up in their garage?
That's right, they
I'm
make
not gonna
fine
fight
wall
it.
decor.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to
We're not
figure,
going
like,
to chase them down. No.
that's what I was just trying to
No.
figure, if it's
No.
part of the state requirement, like.
No.
You get your new one, but you gotta give us your old one. That's.
The
not-
state would prefer that we collect them,
Okay,
but we're too busy to
Okay.
worry about that. And
I would agree on that.
enjoy the new decoration in your garage. I think it's probably the best way I can put that.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
How's that going to affect the Easy Pass?
You know, we just can't get into that tonight, I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
Because we'd have to have you come up to the mic, reintroduce yourself. It's,
It's a good point. Yeah,
the
this is
town
what-
office can help you with these questions.
Absolutely, yeah. Give them if you have questions about this process. Again, I'm just sort of the messenger of the high level of this. If there's any questions that anyone out there listening or here has, give the clerks a call. They'll glad to help you, and so that way before you head down there and the whole thing, they'll be glad to walk you through the whole thing. If email's better or phone's better, whatever it is, they'll help you out. So great. Let's see. I wanted to highlight that we have there's a great deal of work going on in the legislature to try to minimize the impacts. We're talking about property taxes. This is sort of that year where property taxes and that bite budget time. Carrie Lakeshman, who's our able assessor, who has worked for the town of Rockport for decade plus, is working in Camden as well as their assessor. There's an article in the Penn Bay Pilot this week that outlines the hard work that he and the Maine Municipal Association have been putting in to try to. I think it's, you know, there are individual bills, but it's a bigger topic in that they're trying to change the conversation. They're trying to change the way that the role that the property tax has, not just in how you fund government and local government, but trying to find ways to lessen that burden so that, you know, the heavy hand that property taxes feels, as we were talking about earlier, is lessened. So Carrie's efforts and Maine Municipal's efforts were laid out in the Penn Bay Pilot. I linked it in the article here, in that article in my report here, because ultimately, you know, we're going to be going through a revaluation here this summer, and Camden's recently got a lot of towns up and down the coast have felt the burden of these values, and that burden largely is due to us following the law, right? It's the towns are following the law, the statutes of the state, and the Constitution of the state of Maine. And that combination has created a structure by which, you know, predominantly all our schooling costs are predominantly paid for by the town. We're minimum receivers in most cases in this area for state funding for schools. We are effectively funding all changes in the jail, yet without any responsibility or without any ability to change policy and how jail operations are covered. You know, we've talked about where we stand with county government and the inability to sort of make the necessary inroads there to make the right steps where regionalization can work. There's a whole host of issues here, and I sort of talked about it, and it kind of gets a little whiny for me, but there's a lot of institutions that have failed. Maine municipalities, but our residents, our property tax paying residents in particular. And I'll get on my soapbox just briefly to say, we have to change how we do this. You know, I'm given a responsibility to get the most you can out of this town. You're given that responsibility to get the most out of what you can with your levels of responsibility. But often the impacts go higher. I'm not going to get into the federal government and because that's such a highly politically charged environment right now. But there are issues the state has approved and unfunded mandates that they pass down on to municipalities. The county government passes down to municipalities because we send out the property tax. And the property tax is the predominant way how most local operations are funded in Maine. And couple that with an incredible increase in what we saw in the real estate market over the last 5 years, let's say. Our taxpayers are feeling a bite like they never have before. There are periods of these ebbs and flows, and we had gone through about 20 years without that same hit with incredible pressures from the real estate market. Last time was really early 2000s when we had the building boom, MBNA, a lot happening here in the Mid-Coast. It happened again post-COVID, and the issues and the laws and the ability and the structures have always hardened their way around putting that impact and that onus on the property taxpayer. So I urge everyone to take a look at what Carrie is working on, and frankly, to be blunt, the lack of support that those efforts have seen in Augusta. I understand that the legislature is probably loath to take on more responsibility to collect funds on the state level and lessen that burden on the municipal level from the property tax. But the way that this is feeling, that pressure is very real, and it's happening everywhere, not just in the coastal communities. And our state has to take that seriously. It's disappointing that our leaders in Augusta are not seeking to take on that challenge, because it's tremendous, and it's choking the life out of coastal communities for sure. So sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now.
That's helpful, John. I guess I want to just clarify for folks. I mean, the reval is the process that we're required to undergo if we sort of get out of whack in terms of what the market value of the properties are versus what they're being assessed for. And when they are out of whack, that reduces our share of the state income that comes our way. So that's why it's in our interest to spend money and go through the reval. But the reval itself doesn't increase property taxes. It might shift who's paying what portion of the property taxes. But the property taxes are a function of our budget process, ours, the counties, and the schools. And that number, so typically when the valuations go up, the mill rate goes down. Now, that's not to say that we're not all going to see some level of increase. I'm not trying to promise anything, but I just want to separate in our minds the reval process from the budgeting process from those three entities, schools, counties, and the town, that are where the property tax numbers come from. So just because your property increases in value doesn't automatically mean you're going to see an increase in your property taxes.
Better than I could have said it. Thank you, Denise. Yeah, that's very true. So I just the last thing I want to just mention is where we stand with the West Rockport Fire Station. I wouldn't say it's complete. I'm saying 98%. There are a number of items that are important that still need to be resolved and really finalized, particularly in terms of the heating and the exhaust and those sort of issues. But our staff are in the building now. It's certainly suitable for habitation. It's safe. There's no issues on that regard. Our ambulance is parked inside there, so we're responding from the station. We're still not the transporting authority, but we will be as of April 1st. So we've had communication with Northeast Mobile Health about that issue, and so we're ready to go from that shift at 7 a.m. on April 1st. We will be taking the keys and running with it. So things have gone quite well on that end, in terms of being prepared. But obviously that will be when really where rubber meets road and where we're the provider. So it's exciting. There's a lot of work that has gone into that effort, but I think everyone's eager to get started, and I'm looking forward to see our staff be able to show, I think really be able to show what they can do, and provide the quality of care that I think our residents have been looking for a long time. So looking forward to that effort to begin, and the new ambulance.
I'd just like to acknowledge the Lesher Family Foundation
Yep.
too. Something that a lot of folks don't realize is that $1 million of the cost of the new West Rockport Fire Station was funded by a donation from the Lesher family here in town, which was incredibly generous and helps all of us in keeping our taxes down. So
Absolutely.
thank you to the Lesher family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was a huge win for us. So thanks to the Lesher family.
And it's gorgeous.
Isn't it? Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
I live out near there, it's gorgeous.
Yes.
Stunning.
We'll be starting, as I said, on April 1st, with beginning transports. We've already signed a number of mutual aid agreements with 8 other neighboring communities, so that we are ready to get that support when we need it, and vice versa, we're able to support them when they need it. Admittedly, to begin, our focus on Rockport first, and focus on providing that quality of care first, ensure that we're as good as we think we can be with serving our own residents before really trying to go beyond our walls, if there were any, but really to start there. I also want to thank a donation of a different level, but I want to thank Jeff Hall of Jeff's Vacuum, who donated a vacuum for the new station. So
We'll do what we can.
everyone's, that's right, you're doing what we can. So yeah, very exciting, and I think we're also starting to, turn towards spring and some of the parts of the town government that somewhat, they don't go dormant, but they just take a different level. The harbor will be opening up soon. The windows have been replaced there in the front of the Harbor Masters building. It's not open yet because, obviously we're still trying to finish that up, but it's a night and day difference for those walking in and seeing what that will do for that space. Looking forward to that being ready and getting ready on the spring side of things. On the public works side, the snow had been a real detriment holding us back from completing some brush cutting and things. But now that the snow is starting to melt, thank goodness, I expect to start seeing crews back on the roadsides here over the next couple weeks and starting to brush cut and getting some of these areas ready for summer work. So a lot going on, and there's a lot of a lot of events with the library, Opera House. The Conservation Commission has a big effort that's going on at the end of the month. So please check the town calendar on the website, but also I've got more here in this in my report here. So look forward to spring. Spring has sprung, and not a moment too soon. That's all I've got.
Great.
Thanks.
Any questions for John? Thanks, John. Next is the consent agenda, and that is to approve the meeting minutes from February 10, 2025. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right.
One thing I want you to notice is that I asked Diane to put a footer on the bottom of that page. Because we've had, you have that issue
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
where you get in the middle of them and you don't know which side. So hopefully that will help us in the future to
Good
differentiate.
idea. Yeah, then we can just breeze through those.
Yep.
All right. Next item is act on comprehensive, now we're under action items, act on comprehensive plan certification. You want to introduce this, John, for us?
Yes, so this is a continuation of your an action item on your last agenda. This was the this was tabled from that discussion. So just to maybe clarify what this section is, The motion here that's suggested is about is really about the board certification that the comprehensive plan that has been prepared has been prepared with the concepts of the Growth Management Act at heart, and that it's being presented as true and accurate as possible. It's not meant to be an endorsement of the document. It's not meant to be. It's really meant to be limited to really a very finite sandbox of saying you've used the Growth Management Act to approve in the creation of this. You think you've presented something that's true and accurate, and that's where that's really all that really is. That's really all that's asked of the board at this time. There's another agenda item here that will talk about articles that will be drafted or could be drafted, but that's not this, and nor is this the agenda item which would come in your April meeting, where you would actually approve a warrant with potentially a comprehensive plan question in it. So it's really about the certification. They're looking for your approval to certify that Growth Management Act was followed and this is true and accurate. Now, from that conversation, which was really the purpose, I think, of the delay of the actual tabling of that effort, was a desire for the board to discuss this matter a little bit further. Is there potential for the board to amend the document? What's the timeline, and how could that work? So Orion, after the last meeting in February, Orion reached out to our town attorney, and the response is effectively a couple-fold. One, the comp plan committee holds the final pen in drafting the document, not the select board. So the board here can provide recommendations to the comp plan committee, but it's their final say as to what connotes is in that plan. Two, there is time to make those adjustments or recommendations to the comp plan committee. And so the board has the ability tonight, or whatever venue it wishes, to provide comment to the comp plan committee to make change or not at their say so. And then third, is there time for a public hearing on this matter? And again, Phil's advice is that there is. It would follow the same process for public hearing that we would use for all items on the ballot in June, if you so chose to put this item on the ballot. So there's a lot of ifs, that go into this conversation, but effectively everything that you had hoped could potentially be part of making some recommendations and moving this conversation forward is possible. So I think really there is, again, I don't want to lose sight of the purpose of this agenda item, which is Growth Management Act and whether or not this is a true and accurate depiction of our comp plan. And then there's the second part, which really rose out of the conversations last time. Marcia Steinglass had some comments. The board had comments, and so I think there's sort of a secondary piece to this. So when I drafted a suggested motion, there's that suggested motion which really deals with the heart at hand, the issue at hand of that intent. But who knows what other directions in terms of recommendations the board.
But we should discuss as a board, I think we left open, waiting for further information, the question of the page 35 and page 37 of the comp plan that reference short-term rentals, and were not intended, in our view, and I don't even think in the comprehensive plan committee's view, to regulate short-term rentals at all. But we can appreciate, based on emails we've been getting, reports in the press, that there is a lot of confusion and misunderstanding about those sentences. And frankly, those sentences, because they don't do anything, in our view, aren't necessary for a comprehensive plan for Rockport, in my view. And I think we can talk about it as a board, but we certainly don't need to create confusion. I mean, there's so much work that has gone into this comprehensive plan. It's been a 6-year effort by numerous citizens, citizen-led committees, everybody, lots of review, lots of time. So for 2 sentences and an action item to collect data, to somehow get our community to not be supportive of this effort, I think in my view, the better part of the better action for the select board to consider taking is to ask the comprehensive plan committee to recommend that they remove the seasonal housing section, the 2 sentences, and the action item on page 37. But I open.
Yeah, and
We'll talk about it on the board and then hear public comment if there is any.
So Denise, could I make a motion and then we can have a discussion about it?
We could do that, yeah. And then,
So, but just for a moment, to clarify, John, we can make revisions to the current plan that are classified as not significant, and it will not affect the certification at the state.
That's already started, that's right.
Right. So I'm going to suggest some not significant changes to the plan that we recommend to the Comprehensive Planning Committee, if you're okay with the motion. So I move that we recommend to the Comprehensive Planning Committee that they remove the following segments from the draft comprehensive plan in anticipation of placing it before voters in June 2025. Page 35, seasonal homes, that entire section. It's really just 1 paragraph, 2 sentences. Page 37, goals and implementation strategies. Goal identified as H-7, which reads collect short-term rental data as it relates to housing stock, timeline immediate, and just delete it from, we recommend that they delete it from the draft comprehensive plan.
okay, is there a
That's my
second?
motion.
I would second that.
Okay. Okay, and now discussion. I think, Michelle, you were wanting to.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, I probably was the most vocal on our last meeting about that. And I do agree with those recommendations. I do think that will help to alleviate some of the concerns that have been brought to my attention and all of your attention. But I do want to say there has been a tremendous amount of work in this plan, and I think that we have to recognize the incredible amount of effort that's gone into this to get us this way, and to get us this far. And I don't want, a couple of sentences to derail this. So I am in agreement with the removal of that, and I hope that certainly will help to alleviate some of the concerns that are out there.
I agree, because I think some of the comprehension of how the sentences were intended has been misstrued, and it's creating a lot of angst and anger, and that's not the intention, I believe, of the plan committee or even the select board.
I fully agree, and as the liaison, or a liaison to the comp plan committee, I know from the meetings and discussions, it was never intended as a jumping off point to regulate. I supported the idea, I'll be honest, of having a database so we knew what was where, because I've dealt with that myself many years ago in another town I lived in, and it was just to have the information. I thought that would be good, but that said, it's not worth it because it has become a hot button issue, and it's not necessary to be stated in the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, for 2 sentences to derail or detract from a 270-page document is not worth it. David Cocky.
David Cocky, the Comp Plan Committee Chairman. Just to let you know, there is a committee meeting scheduled for Thursday morning at 8:30
Okay.
to act on any recommendations you make, so things could proceed pretty expeditiously. Not predicting what the committee will do, refuse to do that, but the meeting is scheduled.
And
Okay.
David, would you consider this an insignificant change to the?
My personal view, and I would say
I'm not sure. Bring
okay.
your mic up.
Yeah, my personal view is this would be not a substantial change. for the reasons that it said. It was just sort of some added information, does not really relate to any
Okay, thanks.
goals of the plan, so.
Yeah, thanks.
Great, thank you. All right, I guess, are we ready for a vote? Any fur-
Absolutely.
Okay, all those in favor? All right. 5-0. So then, yeah, I'm wondering if let's go ahead and have some public comment, and we'll do the other motion here, which is the motion to certify the comp plan. So, any public comment?
Elizabeth Lance, resident of Rockport, and I think,
Can you
And
move
bring
the
the
mic
mic down. We just want to make sure folks at home can hear.
okay, I'm not sure I'm totally clear on the process for the certification of the comprehensive plan, but it sounds like it goes before the voters and then to the state. Am I correct in that?
We should let Orion answer that. So is that your do you have any other comments you
I
want to
do,
make?
but I just
Well,
want
why
to make
don't-
sure I understand the,
Here, let me just borrow the mic and
sure.
keep Jeff and everyone. Oh, you got that, Jeff? Okay, cool. So the voters are going to approve the comp plan, but it goes to the state first. So we need the state to say, yes, it meets all of our checklist requirement, which is a long spreadsheet that says what has to be in there that meets the Growth Management Act, which is what they're certifying. So in order for it to even be submitted, you kind of have to have those checklists done. So the state says, yes, this is good to go, and then the town of Rockport voters will vote on it.
Okay, so if we were to interject a town hearing,
Bring that mic down.
if we were going to interject a town hearing into this process, where would the appropriate place for that be, Orion? Before it goes to the state?
The
or-
public comment for the comprehensive plan was already held. I forget the date on that. So, David, do you remember the date? I needed to look it up. But, so,
End of January,
yeah.
something like that, we had a public hearing,
Yeah.
about 25 people attended.
So, does that answer your?
Was that as in the form that it's in now?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's made this difficult is because nobody raised this issue during all the official public comment under the comprehensive plan. So that plan essentially got finalized through public comment. And it wasn't until we were doing what you might think of as just a ministerial action to certify it, to send it to the state, is when this issue was first raised to the select board. So that's what's made this a little more difficult, because procedurally, it now needs to go back to the comprehensive plan committee, so then it can go to the voters, when we thought we were done with those steps, but we're
But
good.
it
We-
won't
We're able to
impact-
do it this way.
Yeah, none of it will impact what we're sending to the state.
No.
Okay, and so what was the intent, because we do have some comprehensive plan people here, what was the intent when it was listed as to an immediate need to do a study? So as a taxpayer, when I hear study, I hear associated budget to do a study. So I guess I want to know what the intent was behind those statements.
Okay, you know, I think it was just there wasn't a lot of consideration given, so I just want to reiterate what I said a month ago. The committee pretty much said, short-term rentals, town made a decision, we're not going to get into it. I'm not going to put it in. And then the suggestion was made of maybe it would be just good to have a database so we keep track of what's going on just in general information. And that was it. And I don't think there was any consideration about who would do it, whether it would require a budget. It was just an item in the thing. Would be the town administration select board would be responsible for making a decision to actually do that. So
Okay.
that was it.
Yeah, and it's pretty typical. I don't know if you've looked at the other 269 pages of the comprehensive plan, but it's pretty typical to have an action item. So you outline some things, some information, and then it's like, okay, what are you going to do in response to that? And so that's why there was this action item put in.
Right. Well, with every action item, you got to account for manpower and hours and, all of that. So that's what I was,
Yeah, so that's again, the committee says this would be a good thing to do, the town manager, consultation with select board, setting the budget, looking at managing town employees' times, makes the decision as to what a priority it is for like everything else that the town does.
Right.
The other thing, I'll just backtrack real quick. My understanding is the state has a very extensive list of the data that needs to be in the plan. In fact, if you look at the plan, well over half the pages are data. They're not stuff the committee really talked about, it's just data. It's a really good source for data about the town. And so to a large extent, the certification is, do you have all the data that's required and other items in the thing? It's not the town sitting there at the state saying, this sounds like a good plan, this doesn't look like a good plan. It's a, do you meet all the requirements? So that's all it is.
For this next process, for it to go to the state, understood, but voting on it as a town member, I just want to understand, because it seems almost like, and I could be wrong, I don't know where the comprehensive plan fits in the big picture, but it almost seems like it kind of sets a precedent, because, you know, you got all this work that went into it. Here's, you know, where we're moving. This is how we're going to allocate our resources. And it shapes and guides, correct? That's kind of the whole purpose of the comprehensive plan. So little things like this, you know, once they take seed, now, you know, we're constantly going to revisiting that in the future.
I would just suggest that in terms of discussion about short-term rental and the comprehensive plan, perhaps discussion about that should be postponed until the committee has a chance to act on the select board's recommendations, and the plan very likely is amended to no longer have the action item and the paragraphs that I understand have been causing a lot of consternation. And then if there's something still remaining in the plan at that time, then it, assuming the select board decides to have a public hearing about it as one of the items on the election, then that would be the appropriate time to raise those concerns, if there's still something in it at that time.
I hear you there, and I did intend to speak to short-term rentals, and I've kind of tabled that because of the action that's in place now, but just trying to understand the process. And I was not able to attend the January meeting, but I'm just wondering, there's a lot of work in there, there's a lot of detail in there. If, especially since this issue came up after, it wouldn't be a good idea to have another town hearing, especially pending any potential revisions, even though they may be minor.
There will be a public meeting in advance of the June ballot on all the items that are on the warrant.
But not with any time to make any course correction at that point, so.
Provide a little bit of clarity. So the state's requirement of the public meeting, that was satisfied. So what John was mentioning on the public hearing bit is what Denise was mentioning on the, when is it, April? April's when they finalize their questions for the ballot, that is the hearing component that they're referencing. That's it.
Okay, so
our April select
if the
board meeting.
town issued any other concerns, what's the opportunity for a course correction for other things? May they be deemed minor or not?
I mean, we're really done. It's
Okay.
6 years.
Okay, so it's either yes or no,
Yeah.
all in or all out?
All
Okay.
in or all out.
Okay.
But I will tell you, there is, when you read it, there's nothing in there that is going to say, oh my gosh, Rockport's headed in totally the wrong direction. I mean, it's a very balanced evaluation of Rockport, and we have a lot of different interests in our town, and it's a lot of different citizens participated who come at these issues from different perspectives. So it's not that's why we're sort of amazed that the whole short-term rental thing got blown up into something that isn't even close to the language in the comprehensive plan, because that isn't the intent of the comprehensive plan, to sort of set forth on a regulatory agenda. That's something that the select board does in discussion. I mean, nothing could happen with short-term rentals because of the comprehensive plan. It would happen because citizens wanted it, the select board was working on it, and even then, it would still require a full-on town vote on that narrow question of short-term rentals. So, and
But
I
it does
don't want to
kinda-
be misunderstood. We are not going to touch short-term rentals, please. You know, when I see things like in the Penn Bay pilot, Rockport Select Board must eliminate harassment of residents who operate short-term, or who operate vacation rentals to survive, is so upsetting because we are public servants here and we have listened to our community. And we heard everyone loud and clear in 2021 that they did not want to regulate short-term rentals, and we have not done that. We have not proposed it. At every opportunity, we have stayed close to what our voters wanted. So when this kind of misinformation is being propounded around in the community and getting people worried about whether they can continue to live in Rockport, we have never, we value our residents. We want them to be able to make a living and be able to live well in Rockport. So we have always supported that ability. Even the discussion of any possible regulation of short-term rentals was only in the context of non-resident outside people who might come in and invest in properties. And that's long past, and we're not even going in that direction.
Can I make, I don't know if it's helpful to make a distinction with the comp plan is not, it's a guide, but it's not a mandate. So I think a lot of people might say, oh, if you're finalizing the comp plan and you're approving it, and all that, and even if the town citizens approve it, it's not a mandate. Nothing in that comprehensive plan is this is going to be our goal. We are going to do this. If
Yeah.
you look at comp plans over history, they're probably, I don't know what the percentage of stuff is that's in them that never, ever, ever got addressed. And that's not our
That's
intention.
not what we want to have
But
happen,
that's
but
what,
it's,
Well,
So are you saying that the comprehensive plan doesn't suggest allocation of resources based off of the goals?
I think it sets overarching goals, is my interpretation of it, but it's not mandating that each of these goals is something that the town will follow through and do, you know, because, yeah.
The important thing to remember about our type of government here is that if there ever were to be any kind of regulation, it would have to go before the voters. We don't have the power as a select board to do anything in that regard.
Prior to going before the voters, though, there's an allocation of resources to look at, to study, to
Well, the
draft.
budget is approved in terms of allocation of resources. The voters approve the budget, and the budget is, you know, it's this thick, and there's plenty of detail in there, and so it would be obvious in there if we're allocating resources, and there's public discussion of the budget, and so there's
With
seems
the
to be.
budget committee. Yeah.
well, and
With
it's
the
so
budget
interesting
committee.
how we've sort of come almost full circle to the discussion earlier about the town goals. Because the comprehensive plan is sort of a place for that, and then there is a question that the town manager and the select board work together on. What is our allocation of resources? What's important for the town? What's the direction for the town? Informed by the comprehensive plan as well as the town manager goals, which sort of brings some of that down to a more granular level, as well as our own select board goals, which we work closely with the town manager. And the great thing about Rockport is we love citizens getting involved. So if you have, if you have concerns or think that we're not properly allocating resources, we have excellent town staff that we use, and they participate in all of this. They work for John. John works for us. And we love, there's committees on all levels to get involved, if that's something that you're interested in, because
And so this obviously was a big undertaking. How often is a comprehensive plan done?
Well, it's supposed to be done every 10 years
Right.
with a goal that you begin 5 years in. So the idea is you get your comprehensive plan, you go forward and you try to weed out what you're going to do, make your short list, make your goals, get your implementation, what you can afford to budget, what grants you can get in. And then around 5 years into it, you start looking at then doing that next update. And it's going to take a few years to get there, but roughly every 10 years you need to do an update.
So we'd be talking about 35 from certification, assuming it's certified this year. Okay. Okay,
if we stay on
Thank you
track.
for your interest and
thank you.
questions. Okay. Anybody else want to have any questions about the comprehensive plan? Let's move on to this certification that we need to do. Do we have a motion?
Sure, I can make it if you want, Denise.
Sure.
I move to certify that this comprehensive plan was prepared with the intent of complying with the Growth Management Act, 30 MRSA 4312, 4350, that it includes all applicable required elements of the main comprehensive plan review criteria rule 07-105 CMR 208, and that it is true and accurate as presented.
Is there a second?
I would like to second that.
Okay. Oh, yeah, you're on the, we'll give Michael since he was the liaison. Any discussion? All those in favor? Great. Okay, Ryan, we got it.
So I'll need y'all's signatures on that, so I guess just, I'll get the page.
We have it in there.
We have it right here. I'll pass it around.
We're on it. Thank you.
And again, I thank the Comprehensive Planning Committee for the work they've done.
Yes.
This is,
Yeah, thank you, David, for heading up that group, and Orion for the staff work on that, and the number of citizens who came in at various points, both as part of the Comprehensive Plan Committee and as the other committees in town who reviewed the comprehensive plan. So I think we have a great document.
Could you do just a plug for Civic Ready, just for those that might not attend public meetings or don't have to do?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Orion. The town has a service called Civic Ready, and you can go on the town website and link to it to sign up. You can get, and it's all your choice. You can get emails, you can get texts, you can pick the subject matter that you're interested in. And I'd sort of suggest that you maybe make it a little broader in the beginning, and if you feel like you're getting inundated, you can cut out some of the subjects. But I think I signed up for everything, and it's, you just hear about, something as like a road closure in your area, but it also tells you about things that are happening in town, the fireworks for New Year's, comprehensive plan, public meeting, all these things that are happening in town. And we have a number of folks who have signed up for those, but we have a lot of people who have not. And it's a really easy way to find out what's happening in Rockport.
I found it personally very helpful.
Yeah. And
Very.
it's not like it's not like political campaigns where you just can't deal with any more texts or emails. They don't come that often. So it's a pretty safe thing to sign up for. So the town website, call the town office if it's not easy, if you're finding it not easy to get on it, but do sign up. Okay. Next is the this is sort of act on lease purchase of the 2025 F-550 Horton ambulance. So that's a little narrower in scope than the comprehensive
This
plan.
is one of those lengthy motions
Yep.
where you have to drag, so basically the ambulance has been completed. It is not yet ready for pickup, but will be ready within the next week or so. We have all the leasing documents in place, but we just need the action on the board to take the next step. So
Okay.
and it's 100% finished, right? When we get it?
when we get it.
Okay.
Okay, Kim, you want to?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I move to approve the lease as follows, voted by the Select Board for the Town of Rockport, Maine as follows. Voted 1, that a capital acquisition project, consisting of the lease purchase of one 2025 F-550 Horton ambulance outfitted with striker power stretcher and power lift, and one new Zoll X-Series cardiac monitor defibrillator with related accessories is hereby approved. And 2, that the financing for the project in the principal amount of $568,916.92 is awarded to Androscoggin Bank at an interest rate of 6.44%. And 3, that the town manager is hereby authorized to execute a lease purchase agreement for the project and all the documents reasonably necessary to accomplish the purpose of this vote in his capacity as town manager or in his capacity as town treasurer, as the documents may require. And 4, that the Select Board hereby confirms its determination that the term of the lease does not exceed 120% of the economic life of the project. And 5, that said lease is hereby designated a bank-qualified, tax-exempt obligation of the town for the 2025 calendar year under the provisions of Section 265, subsection B3 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended.
Is there a second? Well done.
I second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Great. Okay. Next is to act on order of town clerk for 2025 annual town meeting warrant articles. John.
This is always a difficult, it's somewhat like the comprehensive plan conversation because it neither does anything, but it's very important. It's the first step of a multi-step process. So for those to somewhat understand how this works, this is the beginning of how the articles that are placed on the ballot for all Rockport residents to vote on are considered. And this is a process that requires the town, or the select board in this case, in a broad strokes sense, doesn't require specific language, it doesn't require, it just merely authorizes the town clerk to begin the process in a handful of the areas that they so deem to begin drafting a ballot. And the ballot creation process begins in March for our June ballot. And by the time, the reason why this process exists, this vote, is that if the board were to wait until its warrant were set, it'd be too late in that process to get the ballots in time. So effectively what this does is this allows our clerk to begin the process of creating the ballot, and that's really the pressure point in this process, and create all the articles and all of the issues. Now, you could remove 2 of these and change the wording, that's fine. But in their process, they have 4 on the ballot and we can work within that. So we're sort of in that pipeline of ballot creation because, again, the way our ballots are created, there's a company who, the scanned ballots that we do, this isn't, because we don't do the hand count anymore, there's a company that actually does the coding and the printing of those ballots. So that's why that process is a little bit more rigid than it had been, back in prior days. So in any event, what's asked of the board tonight is to create and to approve those areas within which they want those questions created. So there are, what I try to do is simply put them into a memo. And the memo calls out 4 different areas of articles to be drafted. One are FY26 budget-related articles, because there's expenditures and revenues that go with that, but effectively that area of question. Engagement with the Land and Water Conservation Fund for the creation of the new park at the former RES property. There's been some earlier conversation on that. Good to see Dom and MJ here. But this is again, not the language, not the granular details of that issue, but that there may be a question on there for you to consider at your April meeting. Approval of the comprehensive plan, we just went through that issue. And then lastly, amendments to the harbor ordinance concerning pier height and length. The Harbor Committee has made a small bunch of amendments to pier height and length that they've identified. I don't see Sam here, but largely to allow for taller and longer piers, and large part, I know they talked about it, I think, at the Harbor Committee meeting last time, but response to some of these climate issues that we're facing. So again, more, these are all area related issues. We don't need to know it's 6.5 feet as opposed to 6.7 feet. The time for that is April. But this
Although I
is
guess
the-
I have a question
region.
on that, because we
Yeah.
have the Harbor Resilience Task Force, and we've hired an engineering firm to sort of look at the harbor as a whole. So I wonder about, I just hadn't heard anything about this before,
Yeah.
so if we're,
Yeah, they're not gonna have we won't have that report
till July.
till July.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about whether we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit if we're already going out and making changes to things in the harbor when there's a bigger picture study going on.
I don't know.
I don't know, because I don't know if we don't have anybody here to,
Well,
how do we find out what this is about?
Bob's here, he's on the committee if you, and
Well,
on
the
the.
Harbor
li-
Resilience Task Force, but not the
Yeah.
harbor.
Oh, the harbor committee.
Yeah, because
okay.
I understand that this is coming from the harbor
Yeah.
committee. So I
Oh.
would want to make sure that it's been, I don't know, I feel like maybe we have two groups doing maybe some overlap here. Because if you need, I mean, if you're looking for potentially, I don't know, larger pier heights and lengths, that sounds to me like some concern that when the ocean is rising and we've got more storm surge, we're trying to get ready to address that.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but I don't think it's gonna, they're not gonna be that closely in step with each other. Would be my guess, because the harbor committee would probably need some time to digest the recommendations from the consultant,
The
and-
Resilience Task Force.
the Resilient Task Force.
Yeah.
And those won't be finalized presumably until July, so the vote's gonna be in June.
Well, right, I get that. I guess this is sort of coming out of the blue. I didn't know that on tap were new revisions to the harbor ordinance that are going to require a townwide vote. So for the select board to take a position on this to our
Yeah.
voters, I guess we'd want to understand better what this is.
I think I would, if there was I would maybe ask if we can have a member of the harbor committee attend, or maybe Sam
In
can be
April
here.
to-
Yeah, to speak in more detail about
I
this
think that might be
request.
helpful for us, just so that we know
Right.
what this is and
Right.
what our position on it
Yeah.
might be.
I will say that this is something that sort of came out of, I want to say in left field, but it came in, not, this is a little bit related to the ORC issue of previously these issues might have gone to the ORC and maybe there would have been a different process, but I think it wouldn't be an issue to, ask the harbor committee to come in,
Yeah.
attend the next meeting, make sure those issues, make sure there's sort of hand in glove with the task force's work, knowing that really there'll be a bit of a a bit of a delay in terms of what other work that the task force will come back with. But my hope is that there will be a raft of changes that will
Right,
go on a whole host of levels, whether it's the harbor ordinance or the the rules or whatever it may be. But I can't speak to it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that makes sense that we
Yeah.
would ask the harbor committee to come talk to us in April about what this is.
But would that preclude us from,
I
doing
think we
this
can
right
do
now?
what we're doing tonight.
we can do this now, yeah?
As
Yeah.
I
and then-
understand it, because
And then April.
there's no
get
substance
the
to what this
details
is
more,
right
and
now.
then decide.
Yeah.
Put it on or don't put it on.
But my ask is always put yourself in a position where you can make that decision later,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you could, if you have to take it off or amend it, you can do that at that
Because if we
point.
don't do it tonight, then it can't be done.
Right.
Right, and
So-
I'd rather have the option.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
because I just don't understand, I mean, it's something new we're going to learn about.
And I have what they've got recommended for changes, and if you want me to share them, or is that,
Let's
wait,
do it, we'll do it.
wait
next
for
time.
them to show up,
Yeah,
okay.
No, I appreciate, yeah.
okay.
And that way if we have questions okay. Well, I guess we have a motion.
May I suggest the motion?
Please do.
I move to approve the town clerk to draft warrant articles for inclusion on the June 2025 annual town meeting referendum election as presented.
Okay, a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Denise, just as a procedural note, when we have a vote, can you state what the vote was?
Like that it's a unanimous, like?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
just 'cause
5-0, unanimous
People
vote.
can't always see everybody's hand going up and
Good point.
all that sort of thing.
Okay,
So far, we've been unanimous, all of them tonight,
yeah,
right?
yep, for the record. All righty, next is we had moved the discussion item up into the action item, which is resolution of ORC future and task force creation. So John.
So this is, again, the conversation that's been going on for a couple meetings at this point. The board discussed the concept of maybe changing its method of ordinance amendment and generation and effectively modernizing the process a bit. And in some cases, taking a step back to what it had been. Try to briefly cover it for those who are new here. Largely, what this would call for is that ordinance issues that emanate from the land use ordinance would largely be drafted by the planner, reviewed by the planning board, and then those recommendations would come to the select board for inclusion, potentially on a warrant. Issues outside of that, so basically everything else, which is a very small percentage of usually what occurs in Rockport in terms of changes of land use, of ordinance changes, would be either in two camps. One, they would come from the planner and through the board, which would largely be minor changes, might be parking or traffic ordinance, it might be, but issues of a smaller magnitude largely. And then there's a latter category, which is those of some significance, those that would maybe require a bit more of a lift of a number of community members to assist in that creation amendment process, by which you would create a task force. And it could be a smaller task force, could be a group of 3, group of 5, but for example, it would allow you to get the benefits of the ORC model, where you would be able to vet with members of the community who may have some experience on this particular topic or what have you, all appointed by the select board, with a mission adopted by the select board, but under the hand of the professional, the planner that we've employed to work for us and certainly knows issues such as these. So it really allows you sort of 3 different models for ordinance creation. One that's more tried and true in terms of the planning board model, one that's on a smaller scale that directly comes from staff, and then a third, which is those that require a little bit more of a community involvement and a different touch that would allow you to sort of reach out and grab some of these experts we seemingly have from I'm driving down the street checking the paving job on Bob Street, and all of a sudden he's on 3 task forces. But that's the way it works in Rockport. We find folks who want to get involved, and luckily, thank goodness for us, have the time to be able to give their time. So that's sort of, I think, where the conversation has last sat.
Yeah, and I think where we ended up at our last meeting is that the ORC is almost too general and generic for this sort of new world where we have a town planner who can really sort of take the laboring oar on a lot of these things, but we do want to make sure we take advantage for the more substantive ordinances of our town expertise. So I think sort of the thinking here is that we would sort of, I don't know if the word is disband, or we no longer really have need for a general, looks like you're maybe ready to make a motion, John?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, what we're really saying is we just want to dissolve the
Dissolve
ordinance
the
review
ORC.
committee.
Yeah,
I move that we dissolve the ordinance review committee,
okay. Is there a second?
Second.
just to move the conversation along.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 5-0 in favor of dissolving the ORC. And that, for those, any ORC members, we've been in touch, but thank you very much for your service over time. And that doesn't mean you can't be involved in ordinance creation. In fact, I think this is sort of task force creation. One of the first ordinances we really need to work on is the sewer ordinance. And that is definitely going to be one where we want to create a task force for the sewer ordinance, because that does take some sort of expertise.
And just to add on this a little bit, any ordinance change gets legal review, so it's not just the town staff and,
Yep.
you know,
Our lawyers look at it.
lawyers
yeah.
look at it very carefully, and they're very well versed in municipal law.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And I would maybe just add, the ORC has been a big part of how Rockport government has operated for decades. There are a lot of names who have gotten up early in the morning because they have their traditional early morning meetings to go through ordinance work. Alex Armentrout, Richard Remsen, Molly Scholes. I mean, there's a long, Will Gartley, Taylor Allen. They've put their time
Steve
in.
Smith, yeah.
They've earned their stripes. Yes, Steve Smith. These folks have earned their stripes. They've done incredible work. This is, we have not, in the same way the town of Rockport has benefited greatly by residents who have stepped forward. Bob's just sitting in the front row, so he gets all the glory tonight. But
Bob Hall.
Yeah, Bob Hall. Yes, there's a lot of people who have gone above and beyond in Rockport, and in a large part that allowed the town to save a great deal of funds over time because they weren't hiring professional people, but they were doing this because of their interest and their interest in seeing the better good of the town happen. And it's I don't look at this as like it's outgrown its time, but it's certainly we have we have professionals who can do the job now. We thank Orion for the time he puts in, but the ability that the town has, or the town has done over the last several decades, to be able to operate and operate it at a very high level in terms of land use regulation, without involving professionals in that capacity is truly remarkable. And I want to thank all of those members who've done those decades of service in some cases. There were no term limits then, I think, but really some tremendous work. And so we thank them for all that. We can't send a letter out to everyone who's ever served on the ORC, but thank you for your time. It has made a huge impact here in Rockport.
Absolutely. So task force creation, to create a sewer ordinance task force, we need a mission statement, some bylaws. Is that, no? just
No
a motion.
bylaws.
No bylaws because it's a task force.
Yeah, so the bylaws are already part of the committee policy. All
That's
you
right.
need is a mission statement, and that's it.
Okay.
And then, probably a decision by the board of how many members you wish to have on that group.
Yeah.
You want to keep it small, is it big? That's up to the board to decide. But, yeah, I think we could potentially have a mission to consider at the board's meeting in April.
Okay.
And then,
And the number, you can propose some odd number,
Yeah.
5 people, something like that.
I would say no larger than 5 because of this type of work.
Yeah, maybe it's
You know.
3, I don't know.
Yeah.
If people have thoughts on that, but.
Either way, it will have to come back to, and this is really the heart of it, the ORC's work or any task force's work all has to come back to the 5 of you. And I think that's they have to prepare you, or they have to provide you with the information you need to be able to make the decisions of what they propose. So if that's 3, if it's 5, but ultimately it's your decision to go along with what they've proposed or not that really carries the day.
Yeah. So that's something we would task you to have ready for us for our next
Sure.
meeting.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And that sort of lets me run into the next, something that's not on the agenda, but just an update in the sort of under the wastewater category. We have been in negotiations with Camden on a wastewater agreement. Those negotiations and discussions continue. They sort of, different people disappear for a week or two this time of year. So in terms of the timing, everybody's back in town, and we're going to, hopefully the goal between the 2 select boards is to have something to discuss publicly early April. So we'll see how that goes. We're still ironing out some issues. It's very complicated. The 2 communities have some different interests, but also a shared interest in trying to work together. So that's where we're headed, and we'll be in touch. We have our own task force on this, so we'll reach out to them as well to give them this update. All right. Select Board liaison reports.
I'm happy to start.
Great.
Harbor Committee. I didn't make the January meeting, but I did make the February meeting. They did discuss figuring out how to do the whole ordinance change that they had recommended. So I think some emails have gone back and forth between Sam and Orion, and now we're looking at that being presented in April for the ballot. The other big thing that was on the agenda was the floats down at Marine Park. They took our questions, recommendations to task. There was a lot of discussion. There's no simple answers. Just for the general public's benefit, there's all the town floats are down there, and there's 11 private floats on the lawn area at the Marine Park. They're not the prettiest thing on the planet. So it does kind of detract from the overall appearance of the Marine Park. But some of the issues with it, you have the boat storage on the east side of the harbor, and that's all been kind of diagrammed out over the past few years, and to monkey with that would really bring a challenge. A few of the floats that are on the lawn that are private are too big to move anywhere else over the road. They're just too big to be transported over the road. I know Abby was going to take some measurements to see what sort of reconfiguration could be done. I took a ride down there and I'm like, I don't know, there's nowhere else down there that they really could go. One of the challenges coming up is the bridge reconstruction. So putting anything near or under the bridge is going to be off the table for a while that's being taken care of. They do stack the floats. One of the issues that was brought up on the safety end of things, the floats that are near the harbor master's office, they're just far enough off the edge so people can walk between the floats and the edge of the pier there. It's a little sketchy, a little dangerous. There's also the ramps that are there. So perhaps for next year, they talked about putting the floats a little closer to the edge, that are actually a little hanging over so people don't have the opportunity to walk around them. Offering some safety options, not necessarily wrapping, but doing some sort of prevention to keep people from climbing on the floats, potentially falling, getting hurt. So it's not a simple subject. They certainly did understand the intent of the question about hopefully doing something different. But it really is not a simple thing to try and move the floats because they are big. But they did discuss that maybe put a cap on how many floats that they store. You know, there's 11 right now, and, you know, put a moratorium, no more personal floats on town property. You know, that's not anything on the table right yet, but just looking at some of those options to limit the Marine Park being a humongous float storage place. And the other issue that they did say too is with the bigger floats, they can only stack them. A couple of them are only stacked too high because they are so big, and you get higher and higher, you're going to collapse something. So, yeah.
Are all of the privately owned floats Rockport properties? Do you know, or did they?
They're in the
Yes.
harbor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
People who
Okay.
live
Yeah.
on the harbor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nothing coming from.
No,
No,
nothing
no,
from other
okay,
towns. No.
I
No.
assumed that.
It's a
but I
good
just-
question, though.
No.
And we get a rental.
We do.
We do.
We do. We do. And they're going to look at that too, because initially, maybe I shouldn't get into this, but initially they do it based on the space that the bottom float takes. And if they're stacked three, I think it's split between the three. I'm not 100% sure. So now it's like, well, do we take that space and each person gets? So those are all things, you know, thoughts, ideas going forward. Nothing concrete yet. So it's, not a simple not a simple thing.
Is it possible it would open up, I mean, once the bridge work is done, does that make more land flexible for, I mean, I just throw that out there.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, with some reconfiguration, but that's got a lot of floats there too now, right? Yeah, I haven't been down under that side, but,
I know, it's.
Yeah.
but it's pretty cozy under there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only rode down again on the Marine Park side just to take a look in the daylight, because last time I was there was New Year's Eve and it was dark and
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like, wow, there's
there's a lot of.
a
floats.
lot, you know, between the town floats as well as the private floats and the boats and,
Yeah.
yeah, it's cozy.
John,
So a couple of questions. Do we charge to store the floats there?
Yes.
do.
So private floats that are stored are paying to be
Correct.
there. And if I'm understanding some of the concerns that were expressed, we're limited with where we can store them because of the size of the floats
For some.
for
some.
some.
Some are a
So-
little smaller, so they're a little bit more flexible to be moved around, but the ones in particular that Kim is referring to, there's some that are, I think they're 30 feet wide, so
Yeah.
they wouldn't be able to go over the road. So there was a sort of a sense, I wasn't at the meeting, but Abby and I talked about this
Yeah.
after. There was a sense, I think, in the committee meeting that, you know, what are these folks to do? Because this float is too big, it can't go anywhere else other than either in the water or on land somewhere nearby. And so they felt, I think, some obligation to help out these property owners find a place to put them.
Well,
Because
I'm
we
not,
set a precedent, we have set a precedent by storing floats, you know, at a cost, but we are storing them.
right.
So to just say, hey, too bad, we can't do it anymore.
Well, it sounds like anybody could create a float any size they want, and it's suddenly our responsibility to find a place to store it. I mean, if you really want to, you know, step back from, you know, some aspects of the question. So, I don't know, I hope the committee will continue to, you know, look at it.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, they definitely,
because I do think that that park is really a key asset for the town, and it makes part of it unusable. So,
I would also think the task force would be part of that conversation in terms of the strategic plan. And,
yeah,
you know, there's the summer months and there's the winter months, and the winter months are, you know, it's less and less time that we're in the boat storage business. But you know, there is a switch that gets flipped, and at some point it looks very different than it does in July. And to make sure both ends of that season work for the town of Rockport, sometimes it works for our residents, but sometimes, I mean, that's a space the town has to manage, and the town floats predominantly and primarily in my mind. So I hope maybe the task force has some ideas, and there may be some other things, whether it's cutting into the banking, maybe there's some ways to sort of, you know, have, you know, block on the side of that hill so you can get a little bit more space into the hill. Again, I don't know, but there may be some thoughts there that.
yeah, I mean, that's a good point. The task force really, I've not heard anybody talking about, you know, storage of floats in the winter in working with the consultant, so.
It's a big issue,
boats,
though.
right.
And the boats are part of that, too, yeah.
Yeah.
Great, thanks,
yeah.
Tim. John, anything?
Planning board. It was a pretty quiet month in Lake Rockport. The primary agenda item was, this month was a pre-application for Midcoast Habitat for Humanity for a major subdivision on what's roughly about a 3.6 acre lot on Commercial Street, which is right adjacent to Guinea Ridge, across from Rockport Auto. And the project would entail essentially what would be described as a pocket neighborhood of about 10 homes of varying sizes. And it also, the plan currently includes a daycare facility closer to Route 1 on that lot. So that was kind of a nice addition, I thought. This pre-application was a very preliminary discussion to identify any significant issues or concerns for the applicant, with the expectation that Habitat will formally submit a more detailed, what they call a pre-application, in a month or two, and then they have to come back again with the final application. So it's, it's just the beginning of a process, and I think we'll see where it goes. It's in a Zone 906 modified business, or modified mixed business residential district, so, there's no issues there. My other liaison report is for the Harbor Strategic Plan. Is it the Strategic Plan Committee? What is the actual? Task Force, sorry. Last meeting was January 30th. It was the launch of a planning initiative with our new consultant, Richardson WSP. And it started with a harbor walk around 2 o'clock, followed by a sit-down meeting at 4. Topics include identifying the stakeholder groups, adopting an outreach plan, sorting out general procedural and communication policies. And going forward, the planning team will provide monthly updates to the task force on the second Tuesday of each month. The planning team also will be developing a survey for key stakeholders and preparing for the first workshop to gain public input in late March. And a second workshop will also be scheduled for mid-May, with a third and final meeting in about mid-July, we hope. So the next meeting is this coming Thursday, March 13th, in the same room we're in right now.
Great.
Those are my reports.
Thanks, John. Michael?
Well, the comprehensive plan, that's all set.
We're all set.
Pathways Committee is meeting again on the 25th of this month. Had to push it a couple of times because of unavailability for people. And the Conservation Commission, there's stuff in the manager's report for the exciting stuff that's coming up there. And that's all I've got for the moment.
Michelle?
Yeah, well, in case you haven't known, it's budget time, so you should all have your budget binders, and the meetings will start here quickly. I know there's a tremendous amount of work that's already gone into this, and many, many more discussions to come. So check your binder, take time to look through it. We'll be starting the discussion shortly, and then we'll all be coming together. I think it's next week, week after. I think it's next week to start the discussion. So. It's my update.
Great, thanks. I have Parks Committee. I think sort of under the overall heading of Parks Committee, we've had a situation in Rockport. It's been about 4 years now where one of our residents, the neighbors, poisoned the trees of their neighbors so they could get a better harbor view. And long standing, the State Forestry Service was involved and the Bureau of Pesticides. And it's finally culminated in a consent agreement that will be entered, that's proposed to be entered by the Bureau of Pesticides for the state of Maine this Friday for the neighbors to, they're not admitting that they did anything, but the findings by the Bureau of Pesticides demonstrates that they could have been the only ones who did this. And it was just a sad situation for those of us who know the neighbor. She has since died, but was just a dear friend and someone who really made that community, that Mechanic Street, just feel like a home and did nothing but welcome these folks. And so for whatever reason, the value of a harbor view to them overrode their feelings for their neighbor. We even let them use her dock. She even let them use her dock for summers. And so it was very distressing to her when this happened. It's taken a long time, but it is now going to be at least addressed at the state level. And I know the town, the press has covered it and is asking, the town is looking into whether we have any authorities to do anything, primarily replacing those trees. I don't know how you get all the poison out of the soil or how much of it ended up in the harbor. So it's a very unfortunate, terrible situation. But at least there's some level of justice being done here. And so that, was sort of instigated by the Parks Committee, Parks and Beautification, over the loss of the trees. So that's...
Denise,
yeah.
I'm just kind of curious what the legal mechanism is when someone goes on somebody else's property,
Right.
Poisons the trees. Who steps in at that point? Is it a state body or is it
Well, in this case, because it was or herbicides, I guess I'm not using the right words, it was herbicides, it was the state board that had jurisdiction. You know, one of the tricky things for the town is because it is on someone else's property, you know, the town potentially has authorities over the landowner. If you were the landowner and you took those trees down, the town, because they're within 75 feet of the harbor, would have authority. And I don't know what you do when it's a neighboring owner who actually trespasses and does that. You know, certainly the landowner would have had a lawsuit against her neighbor, but she was 94 and she said, I have things I want to still do in life and I don't want to be embroiled in a lawsuit. So she was wise in terms of what she could cope with, but it did end up meaning, because there was a similar situation in Camden and that got a lot of national press and a lot of press, and it was sometimes frustrating to those of us who knew this situation, thinking, why are they getting away with it? So at least they're not getting away with it, I guess is what I would say. So that's to be, I don't want to, but I think it's important to know, because this was somebody that we cared about. We're a community, we care about our neighbors, and we want people in our community who take care of each other, not hurt each other.
I'm curious, if I saw correctly, the penalty of $3,000?
Yeah, the
Is that
dollar
correct?
amount didn't even cover what it cost her to take the trees down, so
And
unfortunately.
do you know if it's too late for
People,
citizens
there have
revolt? I
been
mean, I shouldn't be
letters have
advocating
been
that, but
sent
okay.
in to the Board of Pesticides. I think what I understand is the letters have to be sent in 3 days ahead of the hearing. So
Yeah.
today is the 10th and the hearing is on Friday, so within 2 days. And some folks have sent, some of the other neighbors who knew about this and were very upset by it, did send letters, concerned at the low level of penalty.
Yeah.
And I don't know the ins and outs of how they
Yeah.
came up with that number.
Yeah. I probably should say the key issue that distinguishes what happened here and what happened in Camden is that in the case of the Camden matter, the person who was responsible admitted guilt. And though I think there is a great deal of suspicion, perhaps, amongst neighbors, that guilt has not been determined here, nor has there been any admission that someone has done it. So as a result, it goes back to what Denise had said earlier, in that without an admission of guilt or evidence, then you're forced to look at it as what has a land use violation that's occurred on a property, and without evidence that someone else that did it, the only person you can hold responsible is the landowner, which is obviously not, it doesn't make any sense in the world. So, you somewhat have to find fault, find blame, find responsibility. And in Rockport's case, that has not occurred. The Bureau of Pesticides didn't find guilt. This agreement.
Well, no, they actually did. They made some very critical findings because there was quite a paper trail.
Yes.
There were letters and a lot of attempts made to get these trees taken down.
Sure. Yes, but I think the point is that is what has driven a differential approach between how they handled the issue in Camden and how it was handled in Rockport. That's my predominant point.
And one of the Camden people had a big name. So that,
yeah.
I mean, I'm only saying because it generated
Yes.
more public
Sure.
interest.
It also was right next to the town beach,
Yeah.
a public
That's right,
beach, so.
Yeah.
There was a lot of interest there.
Yeah.
So that's the liaison report. Library committee goes along, and when we come to budget session, we love the library because a lot of the expenses that are incurred by the
Yes,
library
we
are
do.
paid for by the library committee's endowment. So it's a good group of folks that manage that endowment, make sure it's over $1 million, and so the income from that is able to pay for a lot of the library expenses. So good group of folks. I guess that's it. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Great. Okay.
Unanimous.
Thanks, Michelle.
Great. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Sign, right.